So in this video, I want to talk about guest characters. A lot of people have talked about their dream wish list like I have in my previous videos, and they like to bring up guest characters, but I didn't, because in my ideal world, we wouldn't be having any guest characters in Injustice 2. But sadly, in reality, guest characters are a very high likelihood going into Injustice 2 because they are an incredibly popular thing, and they help bring in new players into the game, or they certainly help returning players get back into the game. So I thought I would use this video to throw in some interesting names that could be used as DLC guest characters that other people haven't talked about before. So let's first of all address some of the characters that people have already talked about. Spawn is a very likely character to show up in the game. He's a fan favorite character, and even Ed Boon has previously tweeted a poll with him in it, and people voted it up, and it's very likely that he's going to show up in the game. I'm not going to talk about Hellboy, because I think enough people have kind of theorized about him possibly being in the game. And I'm also not going to talk about Sub-Zero, because Sub-Zero I think is a very unique case, and you can go check out my video on that in the description. I certainly don't have a definitive number on how many of the 9 DLC characters are going to be guest characters, which is kind of why I didn't put them on my wish list. So I'm just going to kind of throw out a little bit of an arbitrary number. Let's do 3 guest characters for Injustice 2. These picks are going to be slightly grounded in reality, in the sense that they would be possible, but I'm going to ignore the likelihood of them showing up in the game, okay? So I'm just going to try and give interesting characters that can be done. So basically, these are characters that Warner Brothers either has the rights to, or could easily obtain the rights to. So let's start off with the Mortal Kombat character, because I think that's one that's almost definitely going to happen. I would be very surprised to not see a Mortal Kombat character show up in the game. And remember, this is kind of like a wish list, this isn't like a likelihood type thing, but my ideal character from MKX into Injustice 2 is Tremor. And you might be thinking, well, why Tremor? A lot of people aren't really big fans of Tremor, and even the people who do like Tremor, it's certainly not their favorite character. I haven't heard a lot of people say that Tremor is their favorite Mortal Kombat character. But for me, Tremor really does look like a DC villain, so I think he really suits the role of this universe. When I look at Tremor, I could totally see him being a Flash villain, or a Superman villain, or even a Green Lantern villain or something. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but when I look at Tremor, I could totally see him being a DC villain, and not that that needs to be a criteria for a guest character, but for me personally, this would be my choice. And I think it'd be very interesting, based on his MKX kit, how you could incorporate an amalgamation, that's not how you pronounce that word, but I'm gonna go with it, of all of his different variations in MKX, and combine them into one kit, and have his trait be very interesting in Injustice 2. I just think it would be a really nice character to see in Injustice 2, and I think they could pull it off, and I think he suits that world more than any other MKX character, other than maybe Raiden. Now, we all know NetherRealm loves their horror characters. I mean, just look at MKX, we had Leatherface, we had Jason, we had Alien, I think I'm missing one, but we had all these different awesome horror characters. And less than a week ago, the trailer for It 2017 was released. It was a very popular horror series released in 1990, and it featured the main character, well, the main villain, I guess, the clown Pennywise. But there's kind of a weird thing going on with Pennywise, and I don't know all the details about it because my parents, when I was growing up, never let me watch It, even though I had seen all these crazy horror films, but for some reason they were so paranoid that I would be terrified of It. And now that I'm an adult, I've never gone back and watched It, and now I'm gonna have the chance in the 2017 film, and I feel like a lot of people might have a very similar experience, at least people around my age, but just looking at the cover art, you can very clearly tell this is no ordinary clown, and it would be definitely very interesting to see how they could use a gear system with this character, customize him, make him look all crazy, and it kind of makes sense from a marketing standpoint, right? I think this one's a little bit more of a crazy one, but I think it's actually possible. Okay, so you thought my last 2 were kind of crazy, but they kind of give you an idea of what I mean by not grounded in reality. These are just kind of absurd picks that could be possible, because Warner Brothers do own the rights. Now, something else Warner Bros. Owns the rights to is the CW. And generally, when Injustice fans hear me say CW, they're probably thinking of The Flash, or Arrow, or DC Legends of Tomorrow, or Supergirl. But in this case, I'm thinking of an entirely different character. I'm thinking of a character called Klaus Michelson. I personally watch a lot of TV, and one of the TV shows that my parents originally got into and then they recommended to me was The Originals. And a quick summary of the show, I'm not trying to pitch the show to you, I'm not telling you go watch it, it's definitely not for everyone, but the general summary of the show is that it's in New Orleans, and there's all these different factions. You've got witches, vampires, werewolves, and all these guys, right? Very Teen Drama-y. But one of the characters is Klaus Michelson. He's one of the original vampires. And these guys are meant to be super, super powerful, but he is very special. Not only is he one of the original vampires, he's also a werewolf. And when I hear those two things, both werewolf and vampire, my imagination sparks into some crazy fighting game kit that you could create where he can transform into both his werewolf form and his human/vampire form. And he can switch between them, and one of them does more damage and one of them is slightly slower and maybe a bit more of a grappler type thing. So again, this is a pick that's probably never going to happen, but I would love to see something like this happen, not because I'm super in love with the character. In fact, he's probably one of my least favorite characters on that show, but just because you could make such an interesting kit with that set of rules. A hybrid vampire werewolf could make an incredible fighting game kit. So I know this isn't a particularly exciting list because there's not characters like Power Rangers or Spider-Man in there, but I didn't want to make one of those videos where I just throw out random characters that Warner Brothers is never going to be able to obtain the rights to. I wanted to throw out characters that are unique and interesting that Warner Brothers could feasibly do, but probably aren't going to do because, again, a lot of these characters aren't very well known. Pennywise is one that I think actually really could happen. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Thank you guys so much for all the support recently. You guys have been motivating me so much to make more content, so really, I do appreciate it.